gang. Welcome to Your Marriage Matters with Jim and Christie Jacobus. Our goal is to help you lay the foundation of building the marriage and life you both have always dreamed of. Welcome to Your Marriage Matters with Jim and Christie Jacobus.
Hey there, gang. It's Jim.
And Christie.
Jacobus with Your Marriage Matters podcast number 113. And, babe, we talked last week about our story about how we decided to go full-time in an RV and the process that we used to get through there, IDEA. And today we're going to talk about
inspiration
and how important that is in our marriage. I'm really looking forward to this because you were the inspiration behind where we actually are sitting today. I'm so thankful about you and how inspiring you were about that.
Well, thanks. And I was just mentioning this all couldn't have come together if we hadn't worked as a team and as a partner on it. And since our tagline for Your Marriage Matters is how to build a healthy, vibrant marriage, when you're dreaming together and you're inspired by something, it really can lead to a lot of energy and passion behind it.
Right.
So I think this is a perfect way to start the acronym idea with the start, which is inspiration.
And that creates health too, right?
Exactly.
Awesome, gang. So welcome. Glad to have you here. Again, today we're going to talk about the process we use to make the decision to go full-time in a fifth wheel RV, travel the country, and continue to do what we're doing here. But that process can be used for any number of things. So we're excited you're going to be joining us. If you're here for the first time, I say this every week, but I think you jumped in at a great time. Because, babe, we're talking about some really, really cool things that does keep our marriage more vibrant. And sometimes it's easy to kind of get in a rut.
Right.
To kind of get into that same old pattern, home to work, work to home, blah, blah, and this is going to make sure that we don't get in a rut. Doesn't mean that tomorrow we're going to jump out, buy an RV, and go travel the world full-time or any other idea. But we do want to give you a process for that. And for those of you who've been with us from the start, welcome. Glad you're here. We are so excited about this series because we're so excited about what's ahead of us, the things that we've got on the card, on the table for you guys. Again, just thanks for your support and everything. Like I said, or like Chrissy and I said, we made the decision probably about a year ago now to go full-time in an RV after camping in a 33-foot Keystone Outback, beautiful little travel trailer that you were inspired for us to purchase, and we did. And we started processing, is this a good idea? And then once we decided it was a good idea, then we did a number of things, which we're going to share with you over the next couple of weeks. But that first word, babe, was inspiration. I'm going to read a definition here of the word inspiration. And again, it's part of an acronym: idea, inspiration, discussion, education, and then action. But I like this two definitions of the word inspiration I think are really important. The first one says the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially to do something creative. And I like that, the process of. And then the second one says a sudden, brilliant, creative, or timely idea. So we have two different definitions of inspiration. One that says it's a process, and the other one says that it's a sudden, brilliant idea. And our decision to do this was a combination of both, don't you think?
Yes, because when we looked at it, it was something that had to be done over time. You cannot make some of the decisions that you make on just a whim.
Right.
You won't have the information or the data that you need. So it is important that you do a process, and it does have to be done over time. But the other thing is, the magic is in when it's a sudden thing that becomes like a dream. And the inspiration behind it can really fill you with a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. I remember us sitting for hours just talking about how things could be done and what we would want and how much excitement that brought to
we had a great
us.
time just doing the process. Yes, absolutely.
Right. It was funny, too, when you were talking about the definition, the nurse in me goes, okay, inspiration also means when you draw in, fresh breath and it nourishes your body. So inspiration is something that you can use throughout, your lifetime, but in small ways. It doesn't have to be a major thing like buying an RV, selling your house, traveling the country. It can be things that inspire you to make small steps. This is an inspiration that was a pretty big step.
Yeah, and you just said something there that, again, I just love doing the podcast with you because you say things in the middle of it and I go, oh, that's good stuff right there. Inspiration can be sudden, and we've done all kinds of crazy things on a sudden inspiration, and I think a lot of times that brings spontaneity to a marriage, and some of those have been amazing experiences, and others kind of like going, okay, we probably shouldn't have done that. But the bigger the decision, all right, the more we need to process that decision and get to what is actually the best overall methodology to accomplish the goal that we're inspired to do. We looked at all different kinds of fifth wheels. I mean, how many fifth wheels do you think we went in and out of? Probably hundreds. And how many salespeople did we endure in the process? But that's a decision that should have taken some time.
Right.
And then some decisions shouldn't take forever. So I wanted to say that because we've done enough marriage work, and in our own lives together, I'm a 90-mile-an-hour guy. I make a lot of decisions really quick. You're more like 10 miles an hour. You take your time, you think through it. Which one of those is best? Neither one of those. The combination of your taking time and my willing to pull the trigger, when used together, Team Jacobus is far better than Christie Jacobus or Jim Jacobus is. And so, gang, if you're out there and you're one of those people that make snap decisions, with snap decisions comes more risk and more mistakes. If you're one of those people that have to think about going full-time in an RV for 27 years before you can ever go look at your first RV, that's a problem too. And so we're really talking to everybody out there to be willing to understand that it can be a process, which we're going to teach the process, particularly for major decisions. But sometimes it's just that sudden, brilliant idea that we have to take advantage of.
And you know what's interesting? In the United States right now, because of the pandemic, the RV sales have gone through the roof because people are seeing this as a viable option. We probably didn't look at it as logical as it should be. But there have been a lot of things after we got the inspiration, and we'll talk about it, especially when we're talking about discussion and education. But when we got the inspiration, it was amazing how further data came in that really made us even more comfortable with our decision. And sometimes that's, because like I said, everybody out there is not going to want to buy an RV or not going to do what we're doing. But they can use this to say, okay, what really inspires me? What is it that is my dream, or what would I like to do? Because I've told people we're going to do this, and they're just like, oh, no, not me. I wouldn't want to camp for 10 minutes, much less live full-time in a small space. So I think there's all different kind of things that causes people to be inspired, all kinds of decisions that couples out there could have that they want to share with their spouse. And once again, it doesn't have to be as big as this, but when you get that inspiration, that can really be life-changing and invigorating.
Right, absolutely. So we're going to talk about this whole idea of inspiration, and we're going to break it down a little bit and talk about some more specific things about inspiration. And babe, so you had the first idea, and you were the first one to be inspired to do this, because we talked about last week, it wasn't even on my radar screen. So the first thing about inspiration is listen to yourself. Share with everybody kind of what process you went through and what was going on in your mind, and how did you get inspired to do this?
I don't even remember the first thing that this started with. Like you said, we weren't big campers. It was just, we were looking around the house, and we have a beautiful house. The space around it had a beautiful house. The space around it just wasn't where we needed to be. And it was just, I wish I could tell people it was a spark or it was this real logical, thought-out decision, but it was just a couple of things over a period in time that I thought, this sounds kind of interesting to me. I told you from the very start, I know there's lots of people who live full-time in an RV who are stationary, but I said if we can't travel in a travel trailer, this doesn't appeal to me.
Right.
So I think it was the combination of a simpler lifestyle, less stuff, and more of an opportunity to travel and see this amazing country that we live in. So I think that those two things together were the inspiration. And one of the biggest was the ability to go and see and do and really experience parts of the country and travel.
Well, and again, there were a lot of things going on. We had already decided that a 2-story, 4-bedroom house that we don't even go upstairs but twice a year was no longer in the cards for us. We had already decided that we wanted to move to the Dallas-Fort Worth area to be able to be closer to our grandkids and to have more time to spend with your mom and dad. And so there were a lot of things going on in the background that I think your inspiration started like, okay, well, that fits that question, that fits that question. And so, we got to learn to listen to ourselves. And
you bring up something that's really important. This went on for weeks before I even brought it up to you.
Right.
I was thinking about this, and I thought, where's this coming from? And I didn't have the courage in my own decision or my own inspiration to bring it up because it sounded like a lot of people have told me, gosh, that sounds crazy. I mean, it is such a big leap and change that I do think it sounded even to myself like that doesn't even make sense. How am I going? I don't even have it processed in my own mind. How am I going to communicate that to somebody else? But so the inspiration is very important, but it starts with being able to, like you said, listen to yourself.
Well, again, you share that, and there were people who were like, "You're going to do what?" Mm-hmm. Some people close to us thought it was crazy, right? But there were far more people who went, that sounds awesome. Mm-hmm. And I don't think sometimes we surround ourselves with enough of that sounds awesome people. Mm-hmm. Or how many people said, we've talked about that. Mm-hmm. We've talked about doing that somewhere in the future, but now's not the right time for us. Right. So the first thing, gang, listen to yourself. When you have those things, don't ignore them, all right? Second thing is, for the other half of this equation, learn to listen to your spouse. Mm-hmm. How many amazing things have we experienced in life because we're willing to listen to each other? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have been a professional speaker for almost 30 years had you not listened to my excitement about that a long time ago, back in 1992, 1991, when I first started thinking about it. And I'll never forget, I told you, and I know it sounded like a crazy idea, and you said, I think you'd be great at it. And then we started, and a couple of times I tried to quit, and every time I tried to quit, you're like, no. Mm-hmm. You got to keep doing this because you're really good at it. And here we are. Yeah. Amazing experiences, all different kinds of things like that, small, large, the houses we bought, living in Quail Valley and becoming members of the country club, that entire season of our life that was so valuable. Mm-hmm. I think too many times you and I see couples that struggle because they don't get on board with each other's inspiration. Mm-hmm. In other words, if it's not my idea, it's not a good one.
Right.
And man alive, it's so easy to miss out. And I think we've missed out on some things because either one or both of us were not listening to each other. Mm-hmm. But the more we listen, the more we hear. I told you the other day in respect to this and a number of other things, I spent way too long not listening to you closely and respecting the fact that you have a different point of view than I have and that you bring strengths to the table that I don't bring. Mm-hmm. And man, if I could encourage a couple out there to do anything, it would be learn to listen to each other. Mm-hmm. Because, again, we could go through countless things in our life that one of us brought up to begin with, that the other wasn't on board with, but the other one was like going, well, okay, let's think through that.
Right.
And this is the latest and, to me, the greatest of all the things we've done in our life. And maybe it's because we're doing it right now, but, man, this is exciting stuff.
Well, and think about it when you have communication with everybody. And this doesn't even have to be in a marriage. You have a great idea at work or with your kids. Right. You're inspired for it. There are certain things that could shut that communication down. Oh, we've always done it that way. We don't have the money. We don't have the resources, whatever. And you have this great idea or great inspiration, and you don't have people around you to nurture that idea and help it to grow. That can cause it to stop right in its tracks. So it's really important in a marriage that you at least let somebody hear this out. Because inspiration sometimes is something that, like I said at the very start, I didn't have it all laid out. I didn't have a great plan. I just knew that was something that sounded, pretty cool to me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and again, totally agree with you. That leads to this third step, though. Okay, listen to yourself.
Yeah.
Listen to your spouse, and really, really listen closely when you're both inspired at the same time by something.
Right.
And I think the more you and I have gotten in tune and in step, and Team Jacobus, we've been talking about for a couple of years now, how important Team Jacobus is, more important than Jim or Christie. Sometimes Team Jacobus sees something, and when we're both inspired by it at the same time, that's a, ding, 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 ding. Okay, let's really pay attention to this.
Right.
But that's not going to happen if you and I both individually aren't willing to be inspired. And if you and I are both not willing to hear each other's inspiration, we're never going to get to the place where we both get lit up at the same time. I mean, one of the things that I learned a long time ago from a coaching perspective is when you see your client light up on something, you ask them a question, they get excited about it. Matter of fact, I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and I asked him a question about something, and he just got so excited about it. And I go, "You really like that, don't you?" And he said, "Oh, yeah." I go, "We need to spend more time talking about that."
Exactly.
And we actually, our coaching call was over, and we spent another 20 minutes talking about it. He was apologizing at the end. I go, no, man. I heard you light up on that. This was probably the best 20 minutes we spent in a while. And he goes, "Well, thanks for listening to me, because that is exciting to me." So all of that. Now, two different definitions. Okay, there's the logical side, and there's the emotional side. Listen to the emotion. But the bigger the decision is, we need to process it. We really need to have a process to go through that honors the original inspiration, but yet gets us to the best decision. And we're going to teach more about that over the next couple of weeks. But why do you think the process is so important?
Well, because this is partly emotional. And what's the old saying? Most people make an emotional decision and then try and logically explain it. And there's so much about this that has to be thought out. I had said that I was going to retire, and after that, then I start getting all this information about retirement, and I'm thinking, I've got to make a logical decision about this.
Right.
I have loved the place I've worked. I had a great job. Everything about my job was great, but I couldn't stay at that job if we were going to do this. So there's a lot of other factors that have to come into this inspiration. And if you just drive this with, this is what I want to do and this is when I want to do it, and you become almost impulsive about it, you could make a bad decision. And the inspiration's not wrong. The process surrounding it is what could be wrong. So a lot of times when it's especially a major decision, if you're inspired to buy a guitar because you went to a rock concert last night, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But we're talking, the more major about it. And it kind of goes back to what we said earlier. What causes you to be inspired? What is it? And it can be a little thing. It can be a big thing. But there's a lot of things that I would challenge our couples out there, our individuals. What is it that inspires you? What is it that causes you to feel passion, just like your coaching client did last week?
Well, I'm sitting here, and again, I love the process of doing a podcast with you, because I get inspiration from it. And what I was thinking about is, so we had the idea, you're inspired, we had the idea, I'm on board, we started watching YouTube channels, Keep Your Daydream, Changing Lanes. We found out there's literally millions of people out there living in RVs, hundreds of thousands of people doing it full time, working in an RV. And so then we started going and looking at them. And we were looking at Montanas, and we were looking at Columbuses, and we were looking at Grand Design. We're looking at all these different deals. And if you've never looked at RVs, the number of floor plans out there is just through the roof. And there were these floor plans that had these gigantic bathrooms in the front, and some that had gigantic kitchens in the rear. There's a floor plan for everybody. And so we just kept looking, and we knew that we wanted to work, so we had to have some kind of workspace, and that kind of narrowed it down for a little bit. And we were processing, and we went on a trip to San Marcos, I remember, and we looked at RVs while we were there, and we stayed at an RV that weekend. And on the way home, we go, okay, look, there's like 4 different models that'll all work. Let's start looking for a used one, get a great deal on it. Any of these 4 will work. Remember? And then I saw this floor plan for the first time, with a side porch and a back porch and the garage that we could turn into an office. And then I had a dream, okay? So the process led to me having a dream of Marley laying out on the side porch. And I know it. I don't know if you came home or if I called you and I go, you remember those 4 or 5 different models? And you said, yeah. And I go, not anymore. There's only one. So the process led to inspiration.
Yeah.
You know? And I just think it's so important because you and I know this. We have couples that are really different from each other. He or she is, 90 miles an hour. The other one's 10 miles an hour. One of them is a saver. The other's a spender. One of them has, great passion. The other's a little calmer. And all of that's good if you'll use both sides of that coin to make better decisions and respect each other. So the emotion should lead to process, and the process will create more emotion and inspiration because it's going to give you more insight. So,
right. And we talked about this when you came up with the idea of the acronym idea. It's that it's a circular process.
Yeah.
You don't get the inspiration and then you move on.
It's not linear, yeah.
Right. And sometimes you'll come back after the discussion or the education and get different or more maybe exciting inspiration because it's different than you thought.
Yeah.
So it's not, like you said, it's not linear. You come up with it and you kind of go back and forth through these steps that we're going to talk about. This kind of reminds me of something we've said for years, which is really important, that this kind of leads to, that inspiration is part of, and that's the idea of having a bucket list.
Yep.
And I know we both love to challenge people to put down on paper their bucket list so that they can go back to it and be inspired by it. And one of the things that I think is really encouraging to me is one of the things that was on my bucket list is to see all 50 states. And that was one of the first trips that we're going to do, big trips, is so that we can knock out the last 3.
Yep.
So having a bucket list is probably part of a process. It's more of a fun part of a process. And sometimes, what's on your bucket list might be, illogical. Or might just be kind of fun. Yeah. I wanted to see a horse farm in Kentucky, or something. But sometimes those bucket lists can actually inspire you and have you have something to look forward to, dream about, and plan for. And that really makes it a fun part of the process.
Absolutely. So, gang, here's your homework for this week. Okay, we're talking about this acronym, IDEA. The first letter is I for inspiration. And so your homework this week is we want you to do a bucket list exercise. Now, again, we've talked about this in several of our podcasts here in the past. Here's what you want to do, right? We want you to write down 5 things that you want to do before you, quote, kick the bucket, okay? And again, dream, be inspired, whatever it is. If you want to go to Paris, if you want to go to South America, if you want to, RV full-time, whatever it is, we want you to write down 5 things that you want to do before you, quote, kick the bucket. We're going to ask you to have your spouse write down 5 things they want to do. And here's what we want you to do. First thing we talked about was listen. Listen to what inspires your spouse. Listen to what they said they want to do. Now, if they want to go climb, Mount Everest and they've never walked 10 miles, okay, well, there's going to take a while. That doesn't mean it can't happen. It's going to take a while. Some of those things may mean, you know what, let's figure out how to do it this summer because we got an opportunity to. So listen to each other. But here's what we also want you to do. Make up a list of 5 things that you want to do together.
Exactly.
All right? So we've got yours, mine, and ours, which is what we talked about here. And we want you to share those with us. Go to Your Marriage Matters Facebook group and share on there what were your items that you came up with. If it's just your own, then let us know what your inspiration was. Bottom line is we want you to become intentional about inspiration. We want you to become intentional about hearing your own voice. We want you to become intentional about hearing your spouse's voice. And we want you to become intentional about hearing the voice of your marriage as its own entity. And what is your marriage telling you is inspiring it? So, babe, we would not be where we are without your amazing inspiration, your amazing willingness to hear my crazy ideas of the years. And I'm excited about teaching this to other people. I think we're going to talk about this idea for a long, long time to come. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and adore you and how you've always been so excited about inspiration.
Well, I think one of the things that's important in a marriage that you can grow and you can develop is the opportunity to work together and collaborate together. And I know this over the course of the last 2 months, especially as this has been more of a full-time thing. One of the things that I thought, is this going to be a challenge because we're around each other a great deal more than we used to? And I think the more I'm around you, the more I want to be around you.
I feel the same way.
So thank you for being willing to listen to my dreams and my inspirations, and I love you.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Your Marriage Matters with the Jacobuses. If you have any questions you would like to see us answer or an idea for a future episode, please go to www.yourmarriage-matters.com/QIF and let us know. We will do our very best to make it happen. And if you enjoyed the podcast, we encourage you to share it with your friends that are engaged or seriously dating. We are growing like crazy because you are passing it on. So thank you. That's it for today. We'll see you next week on Your Marriage Matters. Have a great conversation this week.